Dante Alighieri was a 14th century exiled Italian politician who wrote a poem that terrifies us to this day. It's called The Divine Comedy, but we know its first section best, Inferno. On the surface, it's a tour of the Christian afterlife, a journey down the 9 circles of hell to see how sinners are punished. But if you strip away the medieval theology, you realise that Dante wasn't just mapping the afterlife, he was mapping the geography of human suffering. Dante begins his story not in hell, but in a dark wood. He writes, "Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward pathway had been lost." This is the psychological state we've all felt. The anxiety, the depression, the moment you wake up and realise you don't know who you are or where you're going. To get out of this dark wood, Dante can't climb up the mountain of happiness directly. He has to go down. He has to face the darkest parts of himself first. So hell isn't a place you go when you die, it's a headspace. Right now, many of us are walking through Dante's circles without even knowing it. We build these infernos within our own minds, brick by brick, habit by habit, eventually mistaking our cage for normal life. So let's descend. Here are the 9 circles of mental hell that you might be creating for yourself, and how to climb your way back to the stars. The first layers of Dante's hell aren't for evil people. They're for what he called the sins of incontinence, where your passions override your reason. Circle 1. Limbo. When Dante enters this first circle, he expects to hear screaming. Instead, he finds a noble castle surrounded by 7 high walls. Inside, he sees the absolute elite of human intelligence, Homer the poet, and the philosophers Socrates and Plato. And they're not being tortured or anything. They're simply walking slowly, carrying themselves with a somber dignity in a dim, greyish light. Their punishment is poena damni, the pain of loss. They live in a permanent state of longing without hope. They represent the limit of human reason without spiritual action. Trapped in the golden cage of the intellect, this is the trap of intellectualization. These men treated life as a puzzle to be solved rather than a mystery to be lived, analysing virtue from a safe distance without ever being vulnerable enough to practice it. They are the perfect observers, knowing the definition of everything, but the taste of nothing. They stand eternally on the sidelines, experts of a game they're too afraid to play. In the modern world, this is the hell for someone who spends months researching the perfect workout routine, but never actually steps foot in a gym. It's the person who has a perfect checklist for a partner, but refuses to be vulnerable enough to go on a date. It's the viewer watching endless hours of travel vlogs, but too afraid to book a ticket. It's the safe, rational path, but it leads to a grey existence where you analyse life on paper, but feel nothing in your heart. The lesson is that you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you never leave the castle and find something bigger, you're just as dead as the sinners in the fire. Circle 2. Lust. Dante descends into the second circle. The silence of Limbo is shattered by a roaring, chaotic sound like a hurricane. The air is black and moving violently. Dante sees thousands of souls being whipped around the sky, blasted up, down and sideways by a hellish hurricane that never stops. He speaks to Paolo and Francesca, 2 lovers caught in the wind, but don't be fooled by the romance. They were adulterers. Francesca was married to Paolo's own brother. They were betraying their family for a stolen moment. Francesca explains that they were reading a romance novel, lost control, and in that moment of surrendered reason, they were caught by her husband and slaughtered. The punishment is a literal manifestation of their internal state. In life, they let their fluctuating emotions blow them around like leaves. They said, "I can't help it, I'm swept away by passion." So, in hell, they're swept away forever. They have no footing. They have no anchor. In Dante's psychology, lust is the surrender of agency to impulse. People often view themselves as victims of circumstance. I couldn't help it, or the vibe was just there. Francesca blames love and the book she was reading, refusing to take responsibility for her own mind. We see this hurricane today in the person who destroys a stable 10-year family because they got bored and craved the chemical high of a new affair. It's the entrepreneur who starts 5 businesses but finishes none because the excitement faded and the work got hard. You're whipped around by the wind of newness. You're constantly chasing the high of the spark, but you never stay long enough to build the fire. The lesson is clear. If you don't anchor yourself with discipline, your own feelings will blow you away. Circle 3. Gluttony. The howling wind of lust vanishes, replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence, broken only by the sound of freezing rain. The air is thick with a disgusting mix of black snow, hail, and dirty water. The ground has turned into a deep, stinking slush. Here the souls aren't flying, they're drowning in the mud. Standing over them is Cerberus, the monstrous 3-headed dog, barking and clawing at the sinners, representing a hunger that can never be satisfied. Notice the shift in temperature. Lust was hot. It was active, fiery energy. But gluttony, well, that's cold. It's freezing, damp and heavy. This is the geography of addiction. Gluttony is the attempt to fill a spiritual void with material things. The glutton tries to eat the world to feel whole. But because material things, that's food, drugs, digital content and so on, can't satisfy a spiritual hunger, the soul must consume more and more just to feel okay. The cold represents the ultimate isolation of the addict. Addiction might start as a party, but it ends up with you alone, paralysed in the filth, indistinguishable from the sludge around you. It always begins innocently. You drink with friends, you binge-watch shows to bond, you eat to celebrate. The high is active and shared. It tricks you into thinking you're having a good time. But as the hunger grows, the other people disappear. You stop drinking to be social, and instead, you start to drink to cope. You stop watching TV with your family, and you stay up until 3 a.m. alone because you can't sleep. Gluttony erases your individuality. You stop being a person with dreams and become a mouth that just needs to be fed. Not for nourishment, but for anesthesia. Dante describes this state not as a life, but as a coma. You slowly sink into the mud of your own comforts, trapped by the very things you thought would save you. Circle 4. Greed. Dante enters the 4th circle and sees that the place is crowded and violent. Thousands of souls are split into 2 groups. Each person is pushing a massive stone with their chest. The stones are heavy and round, meant to be gold. They push in opposite directions along a curved path. When the 2 groups meet, the stones slam together. The people crash into each other and start yelling. One side shouts, "Why do you hoard?" The other side shouts back, "Why do you waste?" They turn around and push again. It never stops. This circle punishes 2 behaviours, hoarding and wasting. Dante puts them together because they come from the same problem, obsession with money. One clings to it, the other burns through it. Different actions, same mindset. The hoarder acts out of scarcity, terrified to spend a dime, whereas the waster acts out of insecurity, terrified to be seen without status. They're trapped in a zero-sum game, literally fighting each other and blaming the other side for their misery. They never realise that the problem isn't the other people, it's the heavy rock they've chosen to push. Today, this is the rat race, where you work 80 hours a week to make a number go up on a screen. This is hoarding. Or you buy things you can't afford to impress people you don't like. This is wasting. Dante notes that these souls are so consumed by their obsession that they're unrecognizable. They have no faces. This is the ultimate price of greed. You lose your identity. You become your net worth, your car, your zip code. You just become another faceless worker pushing a rock, confusing your standard of living with your quality of life. The lesson here is simple. Money's an excellent servant, but a terrible master. If your identity is tied to what you have rather than who you are, you've already lost. Circle 5. Anger. Dante arrives at the river Styx. But it isn't a river, it's a stagnant black swamp. The punishment here is split into 2 layers, showing the 2 faces of rage. Above the surface, the wrathful. They're naked, covered in slime, tearing each other apart with their teeth and fists in a chaotic, endless brawl. But the true horror lies beneath. Completely submerged in the slime are the sullen. They are invisible. Their presence is known only by the bubbles rising to the surface as they choke on the mud. As they gargle, they recite a terrifying confession. We were sullen in the sweet air. Now we lie sullen in the black mire. The trap is thinking that one is better than the other. The screamer thinks he's strong, the silent brooder thinks he's noble, but both are drowning in the same filth. We see the wrathful everywhere. In the screaming arguments online and the road rage, the constant need to find fault. But we also see the sullen, the people who say, "I'm fine," while resentment quietly shapes every decision they make. Anger doesn't punish the person you're mad at, it punishes you. Expressed without control, it turns you violent. Buried without release, it turns you hollow. And either way, you sink. Dante crosses the swamp and enters the iron walls of the city of Dis. We leave behind the sins of weakness and enter the sins of the intellect, people who use their God-given reason to choose evil. Circle 6. Heresy. Inside the city gates, Dante finds a vast, eerie cemetery. Hundreds of stone tombs stand with their heavy lids propped open, glowing red hot. From one of these tombs rises Farinata, a proud politician. Even while burning from the waist down, he maintains an air of immense arrogance. He ignores the flames to argue with Dante about politics, lineage, and the outcome of a war that ended years ago. He's obsessed with winning an argument that no longer matters. The punishment is the burning tomb. The fire represents their fanaticism. The stone represents the rigidity of their thinking. The tragedy is that the lid of the tomb is open. Farinata could look up at the stars. He could climb out. But he chooses to look only at his enemy. He's literally too proud to leave his own hell. Psychologically, this is the political fanatic who views every disagreement as a war. It's the intellectual egoist who falls in love with their own intelligence and surrounds themselves only with people who agree. If you can't listen to opposing views, or if you'd rather be right and miserable than wrong and free, you are standing in Circle 6, my friend. You're burning to death inside the coffin of your own opinions, trapped by a lid that you're holding down yourself. Circle 7. Violence. Dante enters the circle of violence, which is divided into 3 concentric rings. This circle maps the 3 directions in which human aggression can flow: outward, inward, and against the nature of reality itself. Ring 1. Violence against others. Here, murderers and tyrants boil in a river of boiling blood. The psychological justice is brutal. If you live by blood, you drown in it. This represents a person who creates a toxic environment at home or at work, thinking that they're asserting their dominance. Dante shows the truth. Eventually, toxicity rises above your own neck. You drown in the chaos you created. Ring 2. Violence against self. Dante crosses the river and enters a forest. But there are no leaves, only black thorny branches. He snaps a twig, and the tree screams, bleeding dark sap. These are the souls who rejected their bodies, so they're rooted to the spot as plants. They're constantly eaten by harpies, mythological bird women who represent the inner critic. This is the hell of self-sabotage. Self-hatred paralyzes you. You root yourself in the past, unable to move. You let the voice in your head, the harpy, tear at your self-esteem, eating your potential. Dante notes a heartbreaking detail. These trees can only speak when they're broken. This is the tragic state of depression where a person can't communicate their needs unless they're bleeding or in crisis, using pain as their only voice. Ring 3. Violence against nature. Finally, Dante reaches a sterile desert of red sand where fire rains from the sky. Nothing grows here. This represents the sterility of violence, and here lie two types of sinners relevant to us: blasphemers and usurers. The blasphemer represents the hell of entitlement. This is the chronic victim, cursing the universe for their misfortunes, refusing to accept the reality of their situation. Instead of adapting to reality, they rage against it, burning energy on what should be rather than working with what is. The usurer represents the hell of commodification. Dante warns us that when you obsess over the reward rather than the work, you lose your face. You stop being a person and become a walking resume, defined not by your character, but by the logo on your shirt and the number in your bank account. Circle 8. Fraud. Dante arrives at the Malebolgia, the evil ditches, a massive stone amphitheatre divided into 10 deep trenches. This is the circle of fraud. Fraud requires human intellect. It's the specific act of using your God-given reason to trap and deceive others. Dante describes 10 different trenches of fraud here, ranging from sorcery to political corruption, but 3 of them are particularly dangerous for us today. First is the trench of the flatterers. Here Dante sees souls wading in a river of human excrement. The stench is unbearable. These are the flatterers. In life, they filled the world with fake compliments and self-serving lies to manipulate powerful people. So in hell, they're forced to wallow in it for eternity. Think of the classic corporate yes man or the internet clout chaser who only says what they say in order to get a specific outcome. Whether they agree with or even believe what they say is secondary to getting what they want. They willingly degrade themselves, complimenting people they hate just to get access they don't deserve. So Dante is telling us that when you speak words you don't mean just to please others, you aren't being polite. You're polluting your own soul. Second is the trench of the hypocrites. In this trench, Dante sees a long line of people moving slowly forward at a crawl. Each one wears a bright golden cloak that shines in the dark. But their heads are down, their steps are short and forced. And when he looks closer, he understands why. The cloaks aren't really gold. They're lined with lead, incredibly heavy metal. Every step takes more and more effort. Some can barely stay upright. This is the punishment for false appearances. These are the people who built a polished image for the world. Perfect relationships, perfect careers, perfect lives on display. Everything looking successful from the outside, but keeping that image intact took constant effort. Lies stacked on top of more lies, pressure that never let up. The outside still looks impressive, but the inside is unbearable. The more convincing the image, the heavier the burden. What was meant to impress others now slows them down and breaks them. Pretending costs more than people think. A life built on appearances doesn't collapse all at once. It grinds you down step by step until even moving forward feels impossible. The third trench of note is the trench of the false counselors. Finally, Dante looks down into a dark valley lit by thousands of flickering flames like fireflies. But inside each flame is a soul burning. He meets Ulysses from Homer's Odyssey. He found him trapped inside a tongue of fire. Why? Because he used his silver tongue to trick men into a journey that killed them just to satisfy his own curiosity. This is the hell of the charismatic manipulator. These are the fake gurus, the scam artists and the demagogues. They've weaponized their intelligence. They use their brilliance not to enlighten others, but to blind them. The punishment fits perfectly. Because they set the world on fire with lies, they're now consumed by the very flames they created. Circle 8 teaches us that intelligence without integrity isn't a gift, it's a curse. It doesn't make you a leader, it just makes you a more efficient monster. Circle 9. Treachery. And so we finally reach the absolute bottom of the universe. Here, Dante finds a vast frozen lake called Cocytus. The wind here is a blast of pure hate that freezes everything it touches. The souls here are frozen inside the ice like insects in amber. This is the hell of the cold heart. Dante realizes that while violence is hot, treachery is cold. To betray your brother, your guest, or your benefactor, you can't be angry, you have to be numb. You have to extinguish every spark of human empathy in your heart. Dante encounters Count Ugolino, a political schemer who betrayed allies to gain power, only to be betrayed himself in return, and then starved to death in a prison alongside his own sons. In hell, he takes revenge by endlessly chewing on the skull of the man who locked him away. This represents the grudge. Ugolino isn't just punishing his enemy, he's feeding on his own resentment. His entire identity is frozen around what was done to him. The message is brutal and clear. When you hold on to a grudge, you don't destroy the person you hate, you slowly destroy yourself. Then he meets Fra Alberigo, a monk who invited his own family to a feast, only to have them butchered the moment the fruit was served. Alberigo reveals that treachery is a sin so dark that the moment you commit it, your soul falls instantly to this ice, and a demon takes over your body on earth. Finally, at the very center of the earth is Satan. He's not a cool, charming ruler. He's a pathetic, weeping beast, trapped waist deep in the ice. He has 3 faces, and his giant bat-like wings flap desperately, trying to escape. But here's the irony. The wind generated by his wings is exactly what freezes the lake. The harder he tries to rise, the more trapped he becomes. In the modern world, this is the hell of the narcissist. Like Satan, their constant attempts to dominate others creates the cold wind that drives everyone away. They're left frozen in a prison of their own making, weeping tears that freeze on their face. Circle 9 teaches us the ultimate lesson. The opposite of love isn't hate, which is still a feeling. It's indifference. And with that, the map is complete. We've travelled from the grey sighing of the comfort zone through the raging fire of anger to the frozen silence of the sociopath. And what we've discovered is that the architecture of hell is a funnel, a downward spiral where gravity pulls you towards the sins of malice and requires 0 effort to fall. But Dante didn't write Inferno just to scare us, He wrote it to save us. The most important part of the poem is the exit. At the bottom of the pit, facing the frozen Satan, Dante realizes there's no back door. To escape, he has to do the unthinkable. He has to climb down the hairy flank of the beast itself. He has to grab on to the very thing he fears most and use it as a ladder. This is a rather fantastical illustration of a practical psychological principle. The only way out is through. You can't solve a problem by ignoring it, numbing it, or running away. Whether you're dealing with addiction, anger, or depression, the only way to recover is to confront the source of the suffering directly. You must turn around and face the monster. The poem ends with Dante climbing out to see again the stars. Why stars? Because hell is a place of looking down at yourself, your addictions, your pain, your mud. Freedom is the ability to look up, to see a purpose bigger than your ego, to see a beauty that makes the suffering worth it. So the question isn't which circle are you in. I mean, we're all in one of them at some point. The question is, are you going to stay there? Or are you going to grab the ladder, climb the beast, and get back to the stars? And that's our video. As ever, I've been Dan, you've been awesome, and if you enjoyed what you saw or found it helpful, why not check out our full Philosophies for Life playlist? And for more videos to help you find success and happiness using beautiful philosophical wisdom, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.